Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and our Redeemer. This evening is the night that Jesus has his last meal. He has his last opportunity to be a teacher to his inner circle. In the previous chapter of John, Mary bought nard, which is a thick, musky oil, and she poured it on Jesus' feet, and then she wiped his feet with her hair. A few days ago, Jesus rode into town to the acclaims and the hosanna of the crowd. But tonight, what do we see? Tonight, we see Jesus washing his disciples' feet with his own hands, wearing a simple tunic, and wiping the dust and the oil and the sweat from their dirty feet with a linen cloth that he has tied around his waist. He breaks the bread, and after giving thanks, and he shares the wine, all with them one last time. If you were there, and if you knew that these were the last things you would do together, how precious, how holy would those things be? You'd remember them forever. You'd want to live them over and over, and you'd never want tomorrow to come. Except that without tomorrow, there would never be the day after tomorrow, when things change, or the day after that, when things change again. This Lent, perhaps more than any other, I think we have learned that tomorrow might be very, very different from what today was like, and it scares us. Some of us need tomorrow to be just like today, because change is scary. And today, as hard as it was, it's something we can get used to. Already we are adapting. St. E's is now in its third week of recorded and televised services. And already I know that if I'm going to go to a store, it's likely that there will be a line outside. So where yesterday, I might have thought I only needed 10 minutes to run my errands, but tomorrow, I know it'll be at least an hour. We're adapting. But we still expect tomorrow to be like today. Some of us don't want tomorrow to be like today because today was hard to get through. And for many, tomorrow, the sun will rise and our loved one will still be gone. For many, tomorrow, the sun will rise and we still don't have what we need. We're all being forced to wait. We're all being forced to wait for things to get back to normal, and we can't stand not knowing when that will be. We can't stand knowing that what we held on to today might be gone tomorrow, because even the promise of an Easter joy is not enough to outweigh the practical reality of tomorrow's pain and sorrow. It's how we're wired. We can't help but worry about what tomorrow will bring. But it's not how Jesus acted. And he knew what tomorrow would bring. I think of Jesus' humbleness and his serenity and his focus on what needed to happen at any given moment, because he knew that his tomorrow would be nothing like his being anointed by Mary last week. And he knew that his tomorrow would be nothing like his Hosanna-filled ride into Jerusalem. He knew that instead, his tomorrow would look like humiliation, and it would look like failure. And he knew that from God's view, tomorrow had to come, and the day after that would have to come, and the day after that, because he knew that God is not done with us, and that God takes the long view. Jesus knew, therefore, that there were more lessons to give, even on that very last night. Lessons to be given just like he had given them lessons the day before, and just like he had given them lessons the day before that, just like he had been giving them lessons for roughly the 1,000 days that it had been since the wedding in Cana. Jesus' last lesson, in the midst of what was going to feel like chaos, was to take that long view. Tonight, as I was writing and recording this, I'm watching the BBC Symphony Orchestra, and they're playing Vaughan Williams' Fantasia on a theme of Thomas Tallis. It is being played in the Gloucester Cathedral. That cathedral was built in the early 1100s, just about halfway between when the gospel occurred and now. And Tallis wrote the theme about 450 years ago, which is about halfway between when the cathedral was built and now. But I'm listening to it on a Bluetooth headset, small enough to fit in my ear, over a wireless connection to the internet. And I watch the images on a screen made up of a million tiny glowing dots on a computer that was powered by lithium-ion batteries. The food I ate tonight did not come from my farm or from our commons, but it came from a grocery store. The clothes I'm wearing are not made from natural fibers. And I didn't walk to the store. I sat in a very complicated machine and pushed buttons and pedals and levers, and it took me there and it got me back. Almost none of those things existed 100 years ago when this music was written. Let's agree, nothing stays the same except change. But in the midst of all of this change, there is one thing we should hold on to, that we can hold on to, and that we must hold on to. And it was Jesus's very last lesson to us. We should remember what it was that Jesus said that night that transcends all of this change, the one true constant. Let me read it to you again. So, if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example that you also should do as I have done to you. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. So I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. And by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. In those YouTube comments that was left 3 years ago, someone wrote, how little we are, how large we can be. That is the long view. What will tomorrow bring? Well, it will not be the same day as today, but tomorrow is going to be full of the echoes from today. And remember that one of the drops of water that came out of our faucet is the same drop of water that Jesus used to wash the disciples' feet. And remember that some of the air we breathe is the air that Jesus breathed out as he spoke. And remember that the bread and the wine that was broken that night and shared and drunk has now become part of all of the food we eat and all of the drink we drink. So let's take a step back from the edge of the cliff of worry, worrying about tomorrow, and take a breath instead. Let's return to Psalm 116. We're going to say it together, so please turn to it in your book. Just so you know, this psalm is perhaps 3,000 years old, maybe more. And as we say it out loud together, listen for those voices that worried about tomorrow even then, whose worries have since come and gone, as we remind ourselves that there has always been one God that has stayed with us and will continue to be with us day after day after day. So let's start together out loud at verse 16. O Lord, truly I am your servant. I am your servant and the child of your handmaid. You have freed me from my bonds. I will offer you the sacrifice of thanksgiving, and I will call upon the name of the Lord, and I will fulfill my vows to the Lord in the presence of all the people, in the courts of the Lord's house, in the midst of you, O Jerusalem. That is the long view. Amen.